it goes back a long way, actually, because at one stage I was living in the city in Johannesburg as a little boy, and my mum decided to go farming, and we went out to a farm near Hartbeespoort Dam as little kids, my brother and myself, and from there we just imbibed the world around us because we were flung into it. I was busy on a tractor fairly soon, I was milking cows, I was picking fruit, I was watching the birds and the bees, and I got terribly involved in the environment simply by being there. I think this is a very important point I would always make. If you're in a place, if you're at a place, that's where you can learn a lot from it. And that's what I did. It's my folks taking me out there. And so really, I also, once I was out there, of course, I made connections with many, many people in the environmental field because I became interested in it as I grew older. Going into my teens, Kenneth Newman, for example, the birdman who wrote many books, he was one of the people who came regularly to the farm. You know, spoke often. I found in birds' nests and things like that. So once I got onto the farm, I make that point again. Once I was in the environment, I suddenly found myself really tuning in. And my mum helped me a lot, I must say. She has always been the person who encouraged me in everything I've ever done. And I take my hat off for my mum. As I mentioned in my book, she's a good listener. She was always a very good listener and just encouraged me to go and do my thing and find out more as I went along. Absolutely fantastic. I don't know why, I've always had a writing gene in me somewhere, very deep inside me, been a writing gene. And of course, when I was younger, I didn't write much. I used to send odd messages to people by handwritten notes and so on, but I didn't write a lot. But I realized fairly soon that I was quite good at communicating via writing. And in the early days when I started in the 70s and 80s, it was all about computer-driven stuff, without internet access, just writing as you found it, sometimes handwritten notes. And I thought that it was good to start. And so I just started intuitively, and I found that it worked. I found that I actually had a gift of communication. It's something which I'm very privileged to have. It means that when I write stuff down, when I put stuff across, it does talk to people. It enables them to listen, enables me to communicate with them. And so my writings came naturally to me. And of course, the formal side of my writing only happened when I got married, because then I got married to Darren, who's a very, very bright biology teacher. And so she encouraged me to write it down as well. And so my first books that I actually published with the Aardvark Publications company that I own, Darren and I, was all about just that. Putting ideas down, we thought that it would communicate well with younger people, especially with under the age of 10, 12, 13. And the books that I produced really made a big difference. We'll talk about that at some stage. I've written all these various activity books, which help to turn people on, help switch the switches inside people's minds in terms of what we're trying to do. I never try to teach anybody anything. I've always tried to show them stuff and say, do you like it? And I try to show them such in a way that meant they would hopefully come to like it, yes. So those early days turned me on, the writing started, and then I've just written and written and written and written. You know, as life went on and as I wrote more and more, helping people to understand more about the environments they lived in or visited or knew about for a distance, I've changed the focus myself to an area of sustainability education, because I really feel that even the early books that I wrote about wildlife for young people and children, and geography books that I wrote, and the many other books I wrote, were all about encouraging people to live sustainably on the planet without lecturing. This is the point, as I said earlier. I think lecturing to people never works. I'm encouraging people to think about the matters raised in the books that I write, and that is really under the general umbrella, the focus field of sustainability education, rather a lumpy concept, but one that really works in my brain. It helps me to see and to focus on why I'm writing what I write. And you know, I've written for I write a series of comms from planet Earth. Last 3 or 4 years, I send out a comm every month, encouraging people to think about issues in the environment. It's all about sustainability. How is this issue, is this animal, this bird, this insect we're talking about, is it living in a sustainable world or not? And encouraging people always to see those links, because that is what my life is about. Encouragement to do with sustainability. And folks, let's think about it, let's talk about it. And I invite everyone to talk about the things they've read and learned every time. Even when I go on my runs in the morning, I meet people on the road, we chat about the comms I just sent out, or the rest of the book I've just published. I write for the Wildlife Society magazines. Issues always about communication, messages being received, and to do with sustainability issues. as far as wildlife is concerned in particular, how do those poor animals and birds and bees all live sustainable lives? Well, you might have to ask her yourself. She's here. Let's just see if she'll answer. There you go. Abygale, tell me, can you tell these good folk why you're around? No, obviously not. No, she's always been very quiet and very shy, but Abygale has been with me for 30 or 40 years. You know, as young as I was then and old as I am now, people need to be interested in what you're saying. And to start off with children in particular, I found Abygale a great help. Because I take Abygale with me to all the places I've been to talk to younger people in particular, even at churches and places like that. And it's amazing how the focus switches from Lynn Hurry to Abygale, this rather strange little stuffed toy that I have in my cupboard all those years. And they start to see things from the perspective and from the eyes of Abygale, the animal. The enlightened animal, the animal able to communicate and talk, but to give the stories that make sense and meaning. So really the start was the Aardvark, and then I found the character Abygale. And the spelling came to me as an unusual spelling. It's a very unusual spelling, A-B-Y. And yeah, I think basically she really is integral to all of my life and all the writings I do right now. Even the more formal writing of the geography education, when I talk to school groups. I still take Abygale with me. Because we say, guys, hey, you have to think beyond what we're looking at in print form. We're looking at the way in which the world works, the way in which animals like Abygale Aardvarks and others, buffaloes and bees and lions and elephants, how they relate to the environments just as much as we as human beings could be relating. Aardvark burrows can go down up to 5, 6, 7, even 10 meters under the ground, depending on the environment and how much protection they need during the day. But they're very good diggers, and so their bodies are constructed in such a way that they can dig very rapidly and very quickly and go underground very rapidly. But as a result, while they're underground, living there, they share their burrows with other animals. They're a symbol, if you like, of coexistence, co-relationships that exist between wildlife in a friendly, non-threatening manner. So this first story about the blue swallows we can chat about, but there are also snakes and insects and meerkats and other kind of animals that also share the burrow of an aardvark. So in many ways, it's a symbol of coexistence without worrying about each other too much, because we can coexist in circumstances that we've helped to create. I think many people, if you're in conversations with people and you mention aardvark, they say, yeah, sorry, what's that? You can talk about elephant, lion, buffalo, zebra. Most people that you meet in the street, you've seen it on television or read books or seen pictures of it, they know about those animals, but not many people know about Abygale the aardvark. So first of all, they're quizzical. Why? Tell me more about this animal. Does it exist? What does it do? Where does it live? How does it live? And gradually they're interested in a particular species. The aardvark species becomes more of interest in why we've got an aardvark as our main conversation piece in the book. And I think the more that we learn about animals like aardvarks and other rare species, especially with climate change and the interest of fires and the terrible fires we've had in Australia, the more we learn about the habits of these species, very rarely known about, the more we'll be able to protect the environment and support the animals that live in it. So she really is that kind of symbol of an unknown animal, little known about, who has a lot to say and is very clever and wise in the way in which she can help us and encourage us to know more about the wild animals and the habitats that they live in. You know. Although some of the stories are well known, for example, badgers and honey guys and so on, in the book we can chat about those, there are some stories which are not well known. And in fact, there's one particular story which is very rarely known about, and that's the one that I'd just like to mention, and that is number 3, giant fig trees and tiny fig tree wasps. If you look in the book, you will see huge, ginormous fig trees with elephants standing beneath them. They are so big, the trees, that the elephants look like cattle. They're so small. Now, the full life cycle, the full future, the full continuation of that species of fig trees depends on a wasp that will fit through the eye of a darning needle. So this tiny little wasp is the one that goes inside the fruit of the fig tree, which with the flowers of a fig tree are all upside down, they're inside the fruit. So when the wasp goes in and is inside that fig tree fruit, the whole process of pollination and seed production and all that kind of stuff happens because of this one tiny little insect. It goes into that fruit. It lays its eggs inside the fig tree. Those little eggs eventually hatch into male and female wasps. The little male wasp then chews a hole in the fig so that the female can leave. But before she leaves, she's wandering around inside the flowers of the fig, which are inside this little fruit capsule. She's getting pollen on her legs. She goes out, she squeezes out through this little tiny hole. And I mentioned earlier, she's tiny. And she goes through the holes best because she's got little barbs on her legs to stop her going backwards. Once she's going forward, they help her go forward because the little barbs help her go forward. And so she gets out. And she flies off till she finds another fig tree, another fruit, and the whole thing starts again. And, the detail is extraordinary, and the science behind it is extraordinary. But I come back to what I started by saying. This enormous tree relies on its future with a tiny little wasp that goes through the eye of a darning needle. Brilliant stuff, absolutely marvelous. Quite mind-blowing, actually. And what always interests me is the message that the book is wanting to put across, and that is by cooperating together within species or between species, the lives become better for the ones that are involved. Obviously, with the wasp, without that interaction taking place with the male and the female and the tree itself, there will be no continuation of the wasp species or the tree species. There's an incredible relationship that goes on there. If you think about the buffalo and the egret one that I mentioned, the buffaloes grazing, get up the insects for the egrets so they can get the food that they need. At the same time, if there's some sort of threatening danger coming along, like a lion in particular, lions catch lots of buffalo, then the egrets normally see them first and can warn them. And all kinds of little examples like that. And the one particular one that perhaps I could mention, which is very specific to one story only, given to me by Jean Huron from Maringspoort in Western Cape, where the klipspringer antelope, little klipspringers, are working with the red-winged starlings. And it's unique to that area, and how they evolve this sort of pattern of behavior together, it's just one of those things that marvels of nature. But how the klipspringer has provides the fur for the red-winged starlings to grab all the fur and make the little nesting sites. Klipspringer provides the starlings with they take the salt from the eye of the klipspringer, and that is part of their need for salt, the salt they're taking while they're living in that environment. And so there's this incredible relation between a klipspringer and a bird, a red-winged starling, that becomes a focus of interest. And again, it's an example of amazing interactions that take place between animals, and the whole book is full of those. Some are more better known, others not, which I hope draw people into this world, because this world is important to know more about, and it's certainly very fascinating. Yeah. Another aspect of the book which I think is important, and it was designed this way by very clever people at Briza, and obviously working with me, was to provide illustrations that would almost make a picture on their own. The book is just beautiful colour, it's full colour from cover to cover, it's absolutely a fabulous book, it's just full of the most marvellous pictures. You just see lots of illustrations all the time. And so even a person with unable to read, sitting with mother or father or granny and grandpa, can start looking at animals, buffalo, lions, egrets, elephants, zebras, and all the rest, and start relating to the book by the pictures. So the book's been very carefully laid out by the layout specialist, Renelle Rissos, who's done an absolutely fantastic job. So that when the parent sits and looks through the book with a child who can't read, perhaps, they can start telling stories just by looking at the animals themselves. And then the stories start flowing from that. So the layout is important. Quite often stories are written as stories with illustrations attached to them. I've tried, and I think it's been reasonably successful, to fill the pages with illustrations, pictures of these animals, so you get a very clear picture of what's going on. And then the words explain why those pictures are there and how those animals are working together. So it's brightly coloured, it's beautifully illustrated, the end pages with activities, making little badges to show that you look after hero, look up to and care for animals for tomorrow and always, look after. Getting the young people involved again. The book is constructed to go from the stories into activities. So once you've read the stories through, look at one or two of them, at the back you click the zip there, you find, oh, this is interesting. I can make myself a badge. I become a person who believes in environment and nature and birds, animals, mammals. Yeah, so it's a package. The whole book is a package from cover to cover. And for the first time, we've taken each scientific name, without explaining it in the main part of the book, where that'd be too heavy for the reader. We've taken all the scientific names of the animals, put them back, and explained what the origin of those scientific names is. So I just love it, and that kind of explanation goes through every single animal. There are 40 animals in the book, and each one is carefully explained in that regard. And then I've also added in, as much as I could, all the local names for all the South African languages, all 9, 10 of them. And that too is a fairly unique feature of the book. So I've tried to make the book more than just a set of stories. It's more than just pictures and some nice ideas. It's to draw people in at all ages in particular. I think also parents, by the way, parents and grandparents, hopefully becoming drawn into what is important, why the messages of the book, by the way it's laid out and constructed. And right at the beginning, Abygale Aardvark talks to people. She gives them a message, hey, this is a book by me, and I love this. Lynn helped me write this book, but he's done quite a good job. She signs it with a footprint. So she doesn't sign Abygale Aardvark, she's in a footprint signed there. It's just a book that puts together all these aspects which make it an interesting whole, a holistic kind of entity which is more than just the sum of the parts. So look, I think often books have hidden messages. You can look at a book and the experience of your life help you to interpret the readings or the writings or the pictures slightly differently from the next person. So two people can read the same book and they might get different messages, subtle messages in some instances from their own backgrounds that they come from. Now, if the people reading the book do not have or have a minimal amount of experience related to the natural environment, ecology, environment, birds and bees, nature conservation, even, may I say, in the backyard, even in a township situation, as hard as it is, and as unfair as it is in many instances, there are things there which can reflect important aspects of the work that we're trying to encourage. So it really is a dream that hopefully the book itself is attractive in the sense that a person may give it to a child as a birthday present or Christmas present, or a granny might give it in, but then the adult hopefully will either read it with that person or actually look at it themselves and then become aware that, hang on, this message is quite important, and that these are important, not because of the animals in the book only, but because the book is encouraging whoever uses it, the youngster in particular, to start thinking differently. I'm hoping and praying that somehow that book will start turning switches on, which will lead to other opportunities of thinking, other ways of thinking, other ways of doing things, which will then hopefully grow into a bigger picture for each individual that ever sees this book, in terms of their role that they can play and should be playing as parents, grandparents, or even more than that, as citizens or community members. I always had that dream that somehow my writers will encourage people to take up those roles.